Chapter 1 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. As you see, I want a divorce. Yunjing number 1. The bedroom door was ajar. Ning Qing stood at the door and heard a different sound. She raised her hand expressionlessly and pushed the door. When she saw her, the woman who had just straightened her dress was first frightened and then bashfully said, "Miss Ning." Ning Qing's bright eyes moved as she glanced at her. It was difficult not to be moved by the woman's perfect figure. Then, her gaze fell on the man who had just come out of the bathroom. The scene froze. The woman was flustered and hesitated. "Miss Ning, enough." Ning Qing interrupted her and handed her the bank card she had prepared beforehand. There was no change in her palm-sized face. "It's none of your business. You can leave." "Okay." The woman took the card and hurried past her. Ning Qing looked at Nian calmly. The room was dark. He was hidden in the darkness, so no one could see his expression. She turned on the light and walked to the window in front of him. She pushed the window open to scatter the nauseating smell in the air. The room was quiet and peaceful. Other than the chaos on the bed, no one could tell that they had just had a passionate relationship. Nian Lai walked past her. The smell of shower gel rushed into her nostrils. It was cold and pleasant. Ning Qing stared at him and narrowed her eyes. "Do you have time? I want to talk to you." Nian Lai was one of the top big bosses in Yen City and even the entire country. The Nian family he came from dabbled in various industries. It could be said that the Nian family occupied more than half of the country's commercial territory in the southeast region. And he was the first successor to this commercial kingdom. Coupled with his looks that were comparable to those of the top male idols in the entertainment industry, it could be said that he was a charming prince charming who could shake the business world of the South East region and pile up women with a word. He was such a handsome and perfect man, but he was her husband of 2 years. And she did not know him at all. Nian Lai walked to the wine cabinet and stopped. He poured a cup of strong wine and took a sip. He asked emotionlessly, "What is it?" Ning Qing walked to the sofa and sat down. She said seriously, "It's very important." Nian Lai walked over with a wine glass in hand. His long phoenixes glanced at the document on the table. On the piece of paper was the words, "Divorce Agreement." He frowned and asked the obvious, "What are we talking about?" "As you can see, I want a divorce." "Why?" Looking at the man sitting on the sofa, Ning Qing's lips were filled with self-deprecation. His tone was cold and emotionless. There was no change in his expression, even if he was unhappy. "You're with another woman in our marriage." The light above him blurred his handsome face. He raised his head and finished the wine in one gulp, his thin lips curling into a cold smile. "Didn't you ask that woman to come here because you want me to do this? I'm just helping you." When Ning Qing was exposed by him, the color in her face quickly faded. "You don't love me, and I don't love you either. We don't have any feelings for each other. How can such a marriage continue? Why not?" The man's voice was low and hoarse, with a coldness that kept people at a distance. "You've been lying in bed for so long. Didn't you also become my wife for 2 years? Ning Qing clenched her fists, her nails digging into her flesh. The pain made her control her emotions. "We're just husband and wife in name. If you came in earlier, it wouldn't just be in name." Nian Lai lit a cigarette. His deep and cold eyes were covered by the white mist, making him difficult to see through. Under his cold gaze, Ning Qing knew that she almost had no chance of winning, but she was unwilling. She suppressed her trembling and looked at him. "I found something in your study." Chapter 2 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. His white moonlight is her sister. Ning Qing took out a photo and placed it on the table. Then, she saw thousands of waves rise in the man's calm eyes. They surged violently and the temperature around him fell. She knew that she had made the right bet. The woman in the photo was 17 or 18 years old. She wore a white dress and had black hair. Her eyes were lively and her smile was like a flower. She was a beautiful face that men could not resist with just one look. Nian Lai's eyes were cold as if he wanted to tear her apart on the spot. You entered my study. Ning Qing's smile was a little bitter. If I didn't enter your study, how would I know that the person you've been hiding in your heart is my sister? That's right. The woman in the photo looked almost identical to Ning Qing, so much so that even she could not tell the difference. However, Ning Qing knew that the person who could show such a charming expression was definitely not her. Ning Qing took a deep breath and said, "So, Nian Lai, the person you love has always been my sister. It's because you couldn't marry her that you backed out and married me, right?" His silence confirmed Ning Qing's guess. She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. Her voice was filled with sadness, and her lips were trembling. Do you think it's fun to deceive yourself like this by treating me as her substitute? There was no change in Nian Lai's expression. Beneath his calmness, there was turbulence. Under the light, his exquisite facial features were still clearly visible. Suddenly, Ning Qing thought of the scene of Ning Su standing with him. One was gentle and passionate, while the other was deeply in love and gentle. Anyone who saw them would praise them as a match made in heaven, a perfect couple. She was no exception. If her sister was still around. At the thought of this, Ning Qing lowered her long eyelashes, her expression fragile. Her voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible. I don't remember what happened previously, but that car accident was not what I wanted. Shut up. Nian Lai suddenly said. Ning Qing bit her lip and looked into his deadly eyes as she continued, I know that none of you want my sister to die. If possible, you can't wait for me to die, but I've already survived. Her eyes were filled with tears and agitation. Nian Lai, if you want to remember her, fine. No one will stop you, but you can't drag me along. She had never done anything wrong between the two of them. She did not even know how her sister and Nian Lai met and fell in love, let alone covet and interfere. If she was wrong, the only fault in her life was with Ning Su. However, she wanted to repay Ning Su, not take up the position that originally belonged to Ning Su and spend her life on Nian Lai. This was unfair to the deceased Ning Su. It was the same for her. Heh. With a cold sneer, Ning Qing's entire body froze. Nian Lai's expression was ruthless, and his eyes were filled with earth-shattering pain. His calm tone was filled with strong mockery. Ning Qing, what's the point of saying such things now? Ning Qing trembled violently and mumbled, you want me to let you go? This question made Ning Qing feel like she was in an ice house. Nian Lai stood up. A dark shadow fell and trapped her like a cage. The cigarette in his hand burned out, and his fingertips burned. His face was impassive as he announced coldly, if you're still alive, I won't let you off. Don't think about escaping for the rest of your life. The paper was torn apart and raised in the light. It was strange and sad. From the scattered pieces, Ning Qing saw Nian Lai walking out the door without turning back. He did not even look at her. Her tears finally ran down her face and dripped to the ground. After a long time, the woman stood up and picked up pieces of paper. She lowered her head, her tears mottled. The sadness in her eyes was obvious, but there were still some deeper emotions spilling out, dark and difficult to discern. In the end, the pieces of paper were crumpled up and thrown into the trash can far away. Chapter 3 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Su Su was killed because of her willfulness. Ning Qing did not sleep last night and returned to the Ning family the next morning. Father Ning and Mother Ning were eating breakfast. They were very surprised to see her return. Qing Qing. Mother Ning put down her chopsticks and walked over. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? Hurry, come and sit down. Ning Qing followed her movements and sat down at the dining table. Dad, Mom. You must not have eaten since you came back so early, right? Come, eat some. Mother Ning was full of smiles as she eagerly brought her chopsticks. Okay. How is your body recovering? Are you feeling better? Ning Qing's throat was dry. She only said, yes. Mom, leave it. I'll do it myself. After sitting down and eating 2 mouthfuls, Father Ning suddenly said, Did you quarrel with Nian Lai? Ning Qing's smile faded. Father Ning noticed her expression and looked serious. Ning Qing, you're a married person now, not a 15 or 16-year-old child. How can you go to your parents' house after a fight? Mother Ning frowned. The child has just returned. Why are you saying this? I'm her father. Why can't I criticize her? Ning Qing lowered her head and did not speak. Father Ning's expression turned ugly. She has not been peaceful since she was young. She's still like this after getting married. She's not mature at all. She doesn't look like a married woman. We're both daughters, but your feelings have always been obedient and sensible. You know not to worry me. What about you? You really can't compare to your sister at all. Every curse was heard, and Ning Qing's heart turned cold. Her grip on the chopsticks became stronger and stronger, causing her fingers to hurt. She could not help but raise her head to stop him. Dad! Father Ning was interrupted and could not catch his breath. Look at you. You don't have any manners at all. In the future, don't say that you're my Ning family's daughter. I can't afford to lose face like this. Mother Ning could not stand it anymore and reprimanded, Ning Qingfeng, stop talking. The child has just recovered. You, Pa. Her chopsticks hit the table with a clear sound. The cold female voice rang between the 3 of them. Then I'll die. The 2 of them looked at her. Father Ning was stunned. What did you say? Ning Qing's dark red lips curled up into a sad smile. Since I'm such an eyesore to you, then let me die. After she died, she would no longer have to face their disdain and hate. Mother Ning could not laugh anymore. Qingqing, don't talk nonsense. That's not what your father meant. Then what? Faced with her daughter's cold question, Mother Ning's eyes turned sour. Your father just misses your sister. Coincidentally, his work has not been smooth these past few days. He doesn't mean to be angry with you. Mother Ning turned to Father Ning and elbowed him. Father Ning snorted and did not reply. In the silence, sadness spread silently. Ning Qing lowered her sour eyes and pursed her lips. She had lost her appetite. I'm full. With that, she got up and left the dining table. Father Ning's anger rose again. What do you mean full? The elders haven't left yet, how can you leave first? Who taught you this? Ning Qing's tone was cold. Didn't you teach me since I was young? Her rebuttal fueled the man's anger. What did you say? Ning Qing, you've even learned to talk back to me now. I'm not done talking. Where are you going? Come back. Ning Qing did not stop walking. She turned into the staircase. Father Ning was furious. He turned around and roared at Mother Ning, look at her now. Isn't it all because you spoiled her? Tears shone in Mother Ning's eyes. So what if I did? Father Ning slapped the table and stood up. It's because she's willful that she caused Su Su to die back then. If you still indulge her like this now, you'll only let her make trouble for our Ning family. Mother Ning held back her tears. However, faced with such an unreasonable husband, she could not maintain her rationality. Then why did you still marry Qing Qing to Nian Lai? Don't you know that you're pushing your daughter into a fire pit? Chapter 4 You are listening at novelfull.audio. How could feelings be related to that beast? With her condition, what else can she do other than marry Nian Lai? Go and harm other people's sons in the future. Humph, I, Ning Qingfeng, can't lose this face. Mother Ning was furious. Then in your opinion, is it a good thing for you to marry Qing Qing to him? You're thinking for someone else's son, but you haven't thought about how much your daughter has to suffer for your decision, have you? Father Ning's lips trembled twice and he was speechless. Mother Ning's eyes were filled with tears. She laid on the hospital bed for so long. You didn't allow me to see her when she first woke up. Now that she's back, you're going to reject her again. Ning Qingfeng, must you break this family up? Father Ning's eyes turned red, but he gritted his teeth and did not let go. Mother Ning wiped her tears, her expression firm. Su Su can no longer return. I don't care what you think. In short, I can't lose Qing Qing again. Father Ning was the only one left at the originally perfect dining table. He looked at the dishes on the table and sat down powerlessly. At the staircase, Ning Qing stood there. Her long eyelashes lowered and formed a dark shadow on her face. She turned around and went upstairs. Mother Ning caught up to the second floor and searched for a long time. In the end, she found her in Ning Su's room. Qing Qing. Ning Qing looked up, her bright eyes like a pool of stagnant water. Why are you here? Mother Ning hesitated for a moment before walking in. You don't look good. Are you feeling unwell? Ning Qing looked around. The calmness on her face made her mother panic. Qing Qing. In this familiar and strange room, Ning Qing could no longer find the simple happiness she had back then. The oppressive feeling made her almost unable to breathe. The furnishings in the room were almost unchanged. There was a big bed by the window, a cream-colored closet, and a small desk. A complicated bookshelf was leaning against the side. There were all kinds of books on it. Flowers and hairpins were placed on the dressing table. A thin layer of dust covered the mirror. However, things were different now. Things were different, but people were the same. Ning Qing pursed her lips. Mom, I want to ask you something. Mother Ning smiled gently. What is it? Why did I marry Nian Lai? Mother Ning's smile instantly froze. Why, did you suddenly ask about this? Ning Qing saw her panic, and a hint of coldness flashed across her beautiful eyes. She said, I slept for 3 years. When I woke up, I forgot a lot of things from the past. No one was willing to tell me. I didn't think about anything clearly and was told that. I'm already married, but Mom, why did I marry him? Why did they leave behind a lifetime of evidence with another unrelated person without her permission when she was in a vegetative state? Moreover, that person had a deep relationship with her sister. Mother Ning stammered. Ning Qing looked at her, her tone filled with ice. Is it for money or power? BDNV. Her attitude was cold and different from before. While her heart felt sour, Mother Ning immediately retorted, of course not. Then why? Mother Ning's gaze flickered slightly as she avoided eye contact with her. Ning Qing's heart turned cold. Then I'll change the question. What's my sister's relationship with Nian Lai? Mother Ning's eyes widened and her tone was very ridiculous. What are you saying? Ning Qing held her breath. Her words turned into sharp blades that were filled with mockery. You married me to Nian Lai without my permission. Isn't it because she's dead and I'm still alive? The person Nian Lai wants to marry has always been my sister, right? Chapter 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ning Qing, how long are you going to kneel for? A slap came. What nonsense are you talking about? Mother Ning's expression changed visibly. In the end, her face was filled with resentment as she roared angrily. How can Su Su be related to that animal? He can forget about getting involved with her for the rest of his life. The room fell silent. Mother Ning realized belatedly that she had actually slapped Ning Qing. Her eyes flickered and her mouth fell open. There was nowhere to put that hand. Qing. Qing. Her face hurt, but Ning Qing smiled and said sadly, "You can't pretend anymore, right? This gentleness and love were just an illusion in the end." Mother Ning was at a loss and flustered. Qing, I didn't do it on purpose. I mean, Ning Qing stepped back in rejection and avoided her hand. Mother Ning's hands froze in midair. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths again and again. I understand. She was calm and almost cold. Mother Ning panicked, but she did not know how to explain. A pleading expression appeared on her gentle and refined face. Qing, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to. Ning Qing clenched her fists tightly and forced herself to calm down. When she opened her eyes again, the light in them had completely dissipated, replaced by numbness and coldness. It's okay. Take care of yourself and Dad. I'll go back first. Ning Qing bypassed Mother Ning and ran out. She ignored the shouts behind her and rushed out of the Ning family like a ferocious beast escaping from a flood. In the taxi, Ning Qing's heart ached when she thought of Mother Ning's judgment of Nian Lai. Beast. If he had not done anything overboard, why would her mother scold him with those words? Her mother's rejection of him was not fake. She even felt hate. He clearly did not catch her parents' eye, but they still married her to this beast. Ning Qing smiled bitterly. Her chest was stifled and painful. Her sad gaze was fixed on the car window. The scenery by the roadside flashed past quickly, and she could not see anything. The taxi drove for about half an hour before the driver said, "Miss, it's almost noon. It's easy to get stuck in traffic ahead. Why don't you get off here?" Ning Qing looked over in a daze. A few seconds later, she agreed and paid before getting out of the car. In a daze, she closed the car door and turned around, but her feet tripped on the stairs and she fell to her knees. Ah! The pain in her knees made Ning Qing's eyes overflow with tears. Hey, let me see who this is. It's broad daylight. Why are you kneeling on the street? A female voice exploded above her, filled with schadenfreude and deliberate mockery. Ning Qing clenched her fists and looked up. The slightly bright sunlight pierced Ning Qing's eyes. She could not help but narrow her eyes and look at the woman in gorgeous clothes in front of her. It was Su Yinhuo. This daughter of the Su family, who was loved by thousands, was her husband, Nian Lai's childhood sweetheart. She had learned before that the Su family and the Nian family were family friends. Su Yinhuo's grandfather wanted to marry her to Nian Lai, but unfortunately, Nian Lai married herself, and the marriage agreement was dropped. She also knew that this eldest young lady had loved Nian Lai since she was young. She knew that after Nian Lai married her, he had fought with the Nian family many times and ended up in a farce. At this moment, she was looking at her with disdain and disgust. Su Yinhuo looked at Ning Qing's face and covered her mouth. Surprise appeared on her exquisitely made dot-up face. Oh, I knew it. I thought you looked like Ning Qing. I didn't expect it to be really you. Ning Qing did not want to respond to such lousy acting. Su Yinhuo suddenly leaned down and said with concern, "Are you unhappy? Did you quarrel with Brother Lai? Don't kneel on the ground anymore. Come, I'll help you up." Ning Qing shook off her hand and looked at her coldly. "Don't pretend in front of me. Disgusting." Su Yinhuo retracted her hand, feeling extremely aggrieved. "Sister, why are you saying that about me? I'm just concerned about you." Ning Qing sneered and was about to mock her when a familiar cold voice interrupted. "How long are you going to kneel on the ground for?" Chapter 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Big sister is gracious and decent. No wonder Brother Lai married you. Ning Qing's back froze. "Brother Lai, you're here." She rushed over and held Nian Lai's arm, not hiding anything. Nian Lai looked at the woman on the ground coldly with an unhappy expression. Inua is concerned about you with good intentions, but you're talking to her like this. His words were too obvious. Ning Qing clenched the corner of her shirt tightly and did not explain. Su Inua held Nian Lai tightly. Her eyes were filled with smugness as they landed on Ning Qing. It was as if she was deliberately trying to embarrass her and gouge her heart. She pretended to be weak and generous. Brother Lai, I'm fine. Don't blame big sister. She must have encountered something that made her so unhappy. Nian Lai said coldly, she's heartless, so why is she unhappy? Brother Lai, don't say that. I'm a girl too. Big sister will be angry. Maybe she just saw me with you. Su Inua pretended to understand Ning Qing's feelings. If it were me, I would be jealous if I saw my husband with another woman. Nian Lai's thin lips were pursed into a straight line, and there was no change in his dark eyes. A bone-chilling coldness seeped into her heart. Ning Qing gritted her teeth and restrained her entire body from trembling. Are you done? Big sister, Brother Lai and I just happened to meet and had a meal together. There's nothing between us. Don't be angry. This explanation was so pale. It was more like a provocation to her. Ning Qing took a deep breath and stood up. When she faced them, her expression was already very good. She pursed her lips and said magnanimously, Miss Su, you're joking. If the two of you really just happen to meet, of course I won't be angry. Her reaction was unexpected. Su Inua smiled faintly and held Nian Lai tighter. It's good that you're not angry. Big sister is really generous and understanding. No wonder Brother Lai married you. Hearing this obvious mockery, Ning Qing's heart felt like it was being pierced by needles. She remained expressionless. Miss Su, you're from a prestigious family. You should know the rules better than me. She looked down at her slender fingers. Then, it flashed past. Su Inua shrunk back and said carefully, Big sister, you're right. From what I know, the Su family only has one daughter. I'm about the same age as you. You can call me by my name, but I really can't afford to be called Big Sister. Su Inua's eyes were red. It was as if she had suffered a huge grievance. She wished she could stick to Nian Lai. I grew up with brother Nian Lai and have always called him brother. I was thinking that since you married him, I should call you Big Sister. Ning Qing narrowed her eyes slightly. If you really treat him as your brother, you should call me sister. Law. Su Inua's face was pale. Enough. Nian Lai's gaze was sharp and cold. Ning Qing, who taught you to be so aggressive? Her heart sank. He really would not help her. Ning Qing smirked. Your heart hurts. Nian Lai's expression darkened as he pursed his lips tightly. A storm was brewing. Su Inua pulled Nian Lai's sleeve and begged, Brother Lai, sister. Law, it's my fault. It's all my fault. Don't fight because of me. Nian Lai stared fixedly at Ning Qing as if he wanted to see a hole in her face. In the end, his face was dark and his eyes were cold. Apologize. A cold smile poured from Ning Qing's eyes. Ning Qing, I want you to apologize. She looked back at the man stubbornly and coldly, her words sarcastic. Why should I apologize? Chapter 7 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ning Qing, I really have to thank you for your generosity. She was not the one in the wrong. A faint layer of anger appeared on Nian Lai's face, along with intense disappointment and disgust. You're still so self-righteous when you've done something wrong. Ning Qing, you really don't know how to repent. Ning Qing trembled all over, and her eyes suddenly lost all color. His words were sudden and distant. It turned into another sentence in her ears. You caused Ning Su's death and still live in this world with a clear conscience. Ning Qing, do you not have any guilt or regret? How can you bear it? In a daze, Ning Qing felt like a sharp blade had pierced through her chest. Pain spread to her limbs. She was like a dead person. Her entire body was cold and she could not move. With tears in her eyes, Ning Qing could not see the two of them clearly. Her lips trembled unconsciously as she said, "I'm sorry." The sudden apology surprised Suino. She looked at the pale Ning Qing and then at Nian Lai. She hesitated and replied softly, "It's okay. I didn't take it to heart." However, Ning Qing could not hear her at all. Suino screamed and pointed at her knees. "Big sister, your legs are bleeding." Ning Qing suddenly returned to her senses and looked down at her wounds. The skin on both knees had been scraped open, and the wound on the right side was even more serious. Blood flowed down her slender calf. "Brother Lai, big sister's leg is injured. It must be very inconvenient. Why don't you send her back first?" "It's the same if we meet later," Suino suggested. Ning Qing pursed her lips, her face filled with silent resistance. Suino shook Nian Lai's arm and begged like a spoiled child. "Brother Lai, please send big sister back first. I'm begging you." The woman's voice was ear-piercing. A layer of coldness covered Ning Qing's face. "There's no need." The whining stopped. Ning Qing was expressionless. "Go play. Don't worry about me." Nian Lai's hand slowly clenched. His anger faded, leaving behind a coldness that no one could touch. He stared at the disheveled woman in front of him. Her deliberately straight back revealed her stubborn and unyielding character. Nian Lai's thin lips twitched as he mocked coldly, "It's really you, Ning Qing. I really have to thank you for your generosity." Ning Qing's expression, which was pretending to be relaxed, suddenly froze. The man lowered his eyes and stopped looking at her. He said gently to the woman beside him, "Let's go." "But big sister," Nian Lai stopped in his tracks and his lips curled into a deep sneer. "Madame Nian is considerate and sensible. She won't care about such a small matter." He emphasized the last word. Suino had achieved her goal. She looked regretful, but her tone could not hide her happiness and smugness. "I'm sorry, big sister. I can't do anything about Brother Lai being like this. We'll make a move first." The two of them walked around her, got into the car, and left. Ning Qing touched her chest. It was empty and cold. It did not hurt, but it was oppressive and uncomfortable. Tears fell without warning. She was flustered and wiped her face randomly. Then, she limped to the roadside and wanted to hail a taxi. However, after a long time, there was no empty car. Ning Qing smiled bitterly. Disappointment and powerlessness gradually swallowed her heart. Thought it was as if the entire world had abandoned her. She stood at the intersection for a long time before giving up and limping towards her residence. However, not long after, a car stopped beside her. Ning Qing was puzzled and stopped in her tracks. The car window rolled down and the man's godlike face came into view. His tone was still cold and his words were like an order. "Get in." Ning Qing did not know why he had returned, and she was not in the mood to care about his movements. After all, more than 10 minutes ago, he had just watched coldly as another woman came to bully her. She held her breath. "Go accompany your Miss Su. I don't need your charity." Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He's determined to use her as Ning Su's substitute. "If you have no need for charity, who are you dragging this injured leg for?" Under the soft critique, Ning Qing's face was tense. "I don't need you to care." The contours of Nian Lai's side profile were clear and perfect, exuding clear impatience. "Ning Qing, don't forget who you are now." His eyes scanned her pale face. His lips were pursed in a mocking, threatening way. "Don't embarrass me with the title of young madam of the Nian family." Get in. Don't make me say it a third time. Ning Qing clenched her fists and felt humiliated. However, she had no chance of retaliating. She could only raise her hand to open the car door and get in under the man's cold gaze. The huge car was eerily quiet. Ning Qing almost pressed her entire body against the left car door, not wanting to face the man beside her at all. Nian Lai could see her resistance. He frowned slightly and asked, "You went back to the Ning family?" His voice was cold and emotionless. Ning Qing clenched her fists. Yes. The car became even quieter. Ning Qing frowned, thinking that he would continue asking. Unexpectedly, the man did not say anything else. 10 minutes later, the car stopped steadily outside Yunjing No. 1. Ning Qing pushed the door open and got out of the car. Before she could say anything, the car had already left. She grabbed the corner of her shirt and limped into the door. At night, Ning Qing ate some food. After wrapping her feet in a bandage, she went to the bathroom to take a shower. The roar of a car came from downstairs, muffled by the water. When Ning Qing finished blowing her hair and came out, it was already an hour later. Looking at the man sitting on the sofa, Ning Qing stopped in her tracks. On the sofa, Nian Lai's posture was unrestrained. His hand was on the armrest of the sofa, and there was a cigarette between his long fingers. Sparks flickered and white smoke lingered. His long legs with perfect proportions were crossed as if he had waited for her for a long time. Ning Qing retracted the surprise on her face and said bluntly, "What's the matter?" Under the orange light, his deep and dark eyes landed on her. Ning Qing let out a light breath and walked unsteadily to the bed. When she passed him, she smelled some faint alcohol. She turned and looked down at him. "You're drunk." She sounded very certain. Nian Lai grunted softly. Ning Qing sat on the bed and pulled open the blanket, not planning to care about him. After a long time, there was no movement on the sofa. "I'm going to rest. Please leave." Ning Qing was very calm, which made Nian Lai very unhappy. He swayed and stood up, turning to look at her. "If you're drunk, go back to your room and rest." Nian Lai did not reply and took a deep puff of smoke. The smell of tobacco circled his chest and slowly came out of his thin lips along with his stifled emotions. Then, his fingers relaxed and the cigarette fell. He staggered toward her. Ning Qing widened her eyes and warned, "Nian Lai, your room is on the first floor." Before she could finish her sentence, the other party had already pounced on him. He easily restrained her hands and pressed her legs down, making her unable to struggle or move. Ning Qing shouted in pain, "What are you doing? Let go of me." The overwhelming smell of alcohol on him terrified Ning Qing. Nian Lai lowered his body and scanned her face with his searching gaze. In the end, he murmured gently, "Ah Ning, is that you?" Ning Qing froze for a second and looked up in confusion. "Ah Ning. Who was it?" Before she could react, Nian Lai had already leaned forward and pressed his thin lips against hers. Ning Qing's entire body was tense. She quickly avoided his lips and shouted, "Nian Lai, don't go crazy with alcohol." "I'm not your Ah Ning," she understood immediately. Wasn't Ah Ning Ning Su? He was determined to use her as Ning Su's substitute. Cold sweat flowed down her forehead. Ning Qing pressed against Nian Lai's chest, but she could not compare to the man's strength. His hand went under her shirt. Ning Qing screamed, "Nian Lai, are you crazy? I'm not Ning Su." Chapter 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "If you dare to touch me, you'll regret it." His entire body was hot. He was so strong that she could not withstand him. Even his lips were hot. He leaned against her ear and said each word with extreme love and gentleness. "Ah Ning, it's you, right? I miss you so much. Ah Ning, I was wrong. Please come back. Ah Ning, I'm begging you. Ning Qing felt suffocated. Her vision was blurry. She gritted her teeth and retorted, I'm not your Ah Ning. She's already dead. Have you forgotten? Nian Lai's movements froze. His unclear eyes were filled with pleading and sadness. He was so emotional that it made one feel touched. His voice was low and hoarse, his posture so low that it was like dust. No. Ah Ning, don't say such things. Don't say, he hugged her waist tightly, afraid that she would leave. His tone was humble, not like the high and mighty, cold and heartless man in the day. You're still alive. You won't die. I won't let you die. Sorrow and bitterness overflowed from Ning Qing's heart. She was drenched in sweat and her bright eyes were filled with vigilance as she glared at the ceiling. She's already dead. Stop lying to yourself. His face was completely pressed against her neck, and his warm breath sprayed on her skin, giving her a layer of goosebumps. Ning Qing suppressed her fear and disgust and said word by word, I'm Ning Qing. I'm her sister. She was not her. Ah Ning, you're mine. He refused to listen to her. His palm touched her waist, warm and dangerous. You'll always be mine. Don't leave me. Nian Lai got up slowly. Under Ning Qing's frightened gaze, he reached out and grabbed the collar of her pajamas. The sound of cloth being torn rang in her ears as a very aggressive kiss fell as if it was going to imprint itself into her heart. Ning Qing struggled like crazy. Aren't you with Suino? You drank with her. Why did you come back to look for me? She likes you. You can be with her. Don't touch me. His cold eyes were filled with madness. That strong possessiveness was accompanied by despair. He had already tolerated it to the limit and had nowhere to vent. Ning Qing's entire body trembled. Her red eyes met his as she said ruthlessly like a curse, if you dare touch me, you'll definitely regret it. She won't forgive you. Forever. A tear fell from the corner of his eye and landed on her collarbone. It was hot like his kiss. Ning Qing trembled as she stared at the man on her and bit her lip until it bled. Just one more step. She no longer had the strength. One hand gripped the mattress, and the other fumbled with something until she touched something hard. Her thoughts could no longer keep up with his movements. She did not care what was in her hand and hit the man's head. With a shattering sound, the person on top of her stopped moving. Ning Qing breathed heavily. Warm liquid flowed down from her ears and landed on her eyes. 1 drop, 2 drops. Ning Qing's eyelashes trembled hard. Through the red mist, she saw what was in her hand. It was the night light on the bedside table. Nian Lai only felt a sharp pain at the back of his head. He raised his eyes and before the storm in them could subside, confusion and injuries rushed up. He was instantly aggrieved like a child. Ah Ning, Ning Qing pushed him away. Looking at the red blood on the bed, she shook her head and stepped back. Nian Lai collapsed on the bed in a sorry state. However, he still reached out to grab her. He even begged her. Don't go. Ah Ning, don't. Ning Qing's mind went blank and she took a step back instinctively. Looking at the man whose face was covered in blood, tears fell. Then, she turned around and stumbled out. On the bed, the man was still muttering in pain as his eyelids slowly lowered. Ning Qing rushed down to the second floor and ran through the hall, rushing out of the manor. Lu Jue was smoking by the car. When he saw Ning Qing in such a miserable state, he went forward to stop her. Young madam, what's wrong? His hand was pushed away. When he returned to his senses, the woman had already run far away. He thought of something and his expression changed. He shouted, "Oh no!" and rushed into the manor. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Old friends reunite. Are you Brother Si Chen? She had hurt Nian Lai. She had actually, hurt him. Ning Qing's mind was filled with Nian Lai's gaze from earlier. There was no light in his dark eyes. They were filled with love, sadness, and pain. The wind beside her ear was sharp and cold. When she returned to her senses, she had already run for God knows how far. What's wrong with this person? Why is there so much blood on her? Was she beaten up, or did she kill someone? TSK, she looked so scary. Passers-by gradually pointed fingers at her. Ning Qing lowered her head and realized that the bandage on her leg had broken apart, and blood was seeping out of the gauze. She trembled and touched the liquid beside her eyes. It was bright red. Ning Qing closed her eyes and finally could not take it anymore. She collapsed by the roadside. A few minutes later, she calmed down a little. Looking down at her own tragic state, Ning Qing smiled sadly. She did not bring her phone and did not have a single cent with her. In the huge Yen city, at this moment, she actually did not know where she should go. Go back to the Ning family. She had just finished arguing with her parents this morning. Return to Yunjing number 1. No, she could not go back. How was she going to face that terrifying man? The wounds on her body hurt badly. Ning Qing slowed down and stood up by leaning on the pole. A car stopped in front of her. Ning Qing's entire body was as stiff as a corpse. The car window also rolled down under her frightened gaze, but the person she was thinking of was not in front of her. The man had a handsome face and bright eyes. His facial features were calm and gentle, and the gentleness in his eyes made Ning Qing feel a little familiar. His eyes searched hers. Then, when he saw her face, those brown eyes suddenly lit up. Qing. Ning Qing was stunned. The man quickly pushed the door open and grabbed her wrist. What happened? Why are you in this state? Ning Qing suddenly retracted her hand and sized him up. In the end, she said, you've got the wrong person. I don't know you. The man was not angry, but he looked a little helpless. Ning family's little sister, have you forgotten me already? Ning Qing stopped in her tracks and looked back with surprise. Your brother Si Chen. Yen Siken smiled gently. It's me. Ning Qing looked at the warm man in a white suit in front of her and felt bitterness rush forward. She hid it quickly and forced a smile. When did you come back? I just came back not long ago and I'm not used to it, so I stayed at home with the elders for a few days. Yen Siken took off his jacket and handed it to her. It's cold. Put it on first. Her bare shoulders felt a chill. Ning Qing had no choice but to take the jacket in embarrassment. After thanking him, she put it on. Yen Siken stared at the woman in front of him, his eyes flickering intensely. A lot of words piled up in his throat, but in the end, what he said was, are you planning to go home? I'm going over right now, I can send you off. No need. Ning Qing rejected him straightforwardly. However, she felt that she was too agitated and did not know how to explain for a moment. Brother Si Chen, Yen Sichen's expression was calm. Did you quarrel with your parents? Ning Qing was silent. You're always been this way. You haven't changed at all in all these years. He raised his hand and habitually wanted to touch her head. Ning Qing stepped back, unable to accept his intimacy. The happiness and joy in his eyes fell and became calm. If you don't want to go back, then go to my place for a night. It's late. It's not safe for you to be alone outside.